So let's talk about big ideas. And I don't just mean good ideas, I mean the really big, world changing ones. Ever wonder where they come from? Well, it turns out they often don't pop up from digging deeper into just one single subject. Instead, they happen when we build bridges between them. That's what we're going to break down today, the actual architecture of a breakthrough.
So yeah, let's really dig into that question. Is it some lone genius tucked away in a lab? Or a historian buried deep in an archive? Sure, that's part of it. But the real magic, the stuff that truly sparks innovation, often happens in the spaces between those fields. It's not about isolation at all. It's all about connection.
Okay, but before we can start connecting all these ideas, we gotta understand why they're so separate in the first place, right? So, for a minute, let's just imagine each field of study as its own powerful but kind of isolated island of knowledge. I mean, think about it. Disciplines like biology or computer science give us this incredible deep knowledge. Biologists, they developed amazing methods for sequencing DNA. Computer scientists created these powerful algorithms to manage massive databases. Each has its own special tools and its own language to make sense of its piece of the world. But that same structure can also build up these massive walls, creating these intellectual silos that can actually keep us from seeing the bigger picture. And this brings us to a super important point. You've probably heard multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary thrown around, but they are worlds apart. Multidisciplinary is like having an architect, an engineer, and a designer in the same room. They're all working on the same project, but they're kind of doing their own thing, side by side. But interdisciplinary? Whoa, that's different. That's when they all get together, share their toolkits, and literally invent a completely new way to build something. And that's our focus today, that deep, sometimes messy, but absolutely brilliant integration.
So how do we get from those isolated islands to a connected continent of ideas? Well, it all starts with building the very first bridges.
And building these first bridges usually follows a pretty clear three-step process. First, you just juxtapose. You put two things that seem totally unrelated next to each other. So picture this. Back in the 90s, biologists put the huge, freshly sequenced human genome next to the problem of data storage, just to see what would happen. Then you hunt for analogies. They started to see that the four letters of DNA, A, C, T, and G, were like a biological code, kind of similar in structure to binary computer code. And finally, you actively cross boundaries. You take something like a search algorithm from computer science, and you apply it to the massive text of the human genome. And that's really the key here. Crossing these boundaries isn't just about borrowing a cool idea, it's about disrupting the status quo. It forces a conversation between fields like genetics and computer programming that honestly probably would have never spoken to each other. And it's in that new conversation where all these new possibilities are born. Okay, so once those first, maybe a little rickety bridges are built, the real work begins. It's time to move way beyond just comparing things and start to forge much, much deeper connections. Now, this is the heavy lifting. Of course, it starts with collaboration, getting different kinds of experts to really work together. And that can lead to fusion, where their ideas start to blend. But the two most powerful steps, where the real fireworks happen, are integration and then synthesis.
Think of integration like being an architect, but for ideas. You're taking pieces from completely different blueprints, and you're figuring out how to fit them all together. This is when computer scientists started building specific software for biologists, tweaking their algorithms to harmonize with the unique structure of genetic data. You're not just taping them together, you're making them work as a single, coherent whole. And look, if integration is architecture, then synthesis, well, synthesis is basically alchemy. It's where you combine those different elements and create something fundamentally new. It's not just biology plus computer science. No way. It's the birth of an entirely new field, bioinformatics, a brand new framework that is so much greater than the sum of its parts, with its own methods, its own journals, and questions that literally couldn't have even existed before. So what's the reward for all this hard work? All this bridge building and connection forging? It's the profound ability to finally see the problem in its entirety. This leads us right to this idea of holism. It's like instead of seeing a forest as just a collection of individual trees, you suddenly see the entire ecosystem, the soil, the animals, the weather, the trees, all as one interconnected living system. And that kind of perspective is absolutely essential for tackling our world's most complex challenges. And that's really the ultimate goal here, isn't it? To achieve a whole picture perspective. Instead of just seeing a disease's symptoms, bioinformatics lets us see the entire genetic and systemic profile behind it. It's an understanding so comprehensive that no single discipline could ever have provided it on its own.
Which brings us to the final and honestly the most exciting part of our journey. This is where it all pays off. This is the zone of innovation. After all that work, the connecting, the integrating, the synthesizing, what do you get? What is the ultimate yield? One word: novelty. We're talking about brand new ideas, things like personalized medicine, gene editing therapies, completely new ways of seeing the world that have never existed before. So where does all this new stuff live? It lives right here, in what the source material calls the interstitial zone. This is the fertile ground between the islands of knowledge. It's not in biology, and it's not in computer science. It's in the space where they overlap, collide, and create something totally new like bioinformatics. That is the engine room of breakthrough thinking. So let's just do a super quick recap of this incredible journey. We start with those isolated disciplines, our islands, like biology and computer science. We build those tentative first bridges using analogies, seeing DNA as a form of code. Then we forge deeper connections through integration and synthesis, creating a whole new field. This lets us achieve a holistic, whole-picture view, and from that amazing vantage point, we generate true novelty in that interstitial zone. And that just leaves us with one final, crucial question. And this isn't just some academic exercise. This is a blueprint for innovation. So, looking at your work, your passions, your interests, what boundaries are you going to cross to find the next big idea?